It's very easy to make a good Sonic video on the internet. Not necessarily because I think they're bad, but because it's remarkably easy to say something very generic and uninspired, but package it in a way that feels really smart. You know, that pseudo-intellectual Sonic content. Anyone can do it. Praise the adventure, praise the dark age, be critical of everything of the current decade Sonic has given us. And congrats, you just made a good Sonic video. I'm not really gonna do that. That's not really my lane. Aaron Raguda drew comparisons to the Black Civil Rights Movement, to X-Men and Star Wars. Just let me have this one. Sonic is a series interestingly founded on how much it rebelled against the norm, in Mario. Mario was a corporate video game icon, and Sonic was designed to be the antithesis of this. Sonic has attitude, he's edgy, he's cool. But these elements of the character translate even into his world. Sonic is anthropomorphized, but he's not presented on a level beyond the animals he saves. He is to them as they are to him, fighting for their freedom against this crazy scientist. Sonic's spirit is his love of freedom. Oftentimes, Sonic is compared to the wind because of this. His nickname is the Blue Blur. One of his theme songs is Night of the Wind. Wind is reminiscent of freedom. In Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, the air element, also known as the lung, is associated with the movement of the mind, speech, and body. As a matter of fact, Avatar: The Last Airbender has nomads based on these Tibetan Buddhists, and their philosophy is still respectfully simplified to freedom. Make no mistake, Sonic's conceptually always been about freedom. It's no coincidence that an overwhelming majority of his multimedia adaptations have him depicted as a freedom fighter. And to have this scientifically driven villain attempt to industrialize their environmental paradise by force is an inherent unspoken element of the series. It's why narratively, the original Genesis games go from the lush green hills to the mechanical metallic madness. This is Sonic's world, and this is what it could be under Eggman's rule. Yo, I got mixed opinions about Sonic CD, but it perfectly encapsulates these ideas with its good and bad future ideas. The execution is questionable, but the idea is still derivative of these concepts.
Eggman Empire. Yeah, right. That egghead sure loves mechanical things, doesn't he?
Robotnik works for reasons I stated above. He's a big bad villain designed to personify these industrialist values which Sonic doesn't co-sign. It should be noted that Sonic's issue isn't inherently the concept of mechanics. Sonic's best friend is Tails. He's an animal and an inventor. He makes gadgets, he makes machines, he makes robots. In a way, he's just like Robotnik. It's even stated that the tornado is Sonic's plane. Sonic's synergy confirms that there's a mandate in the Sonic Bible that states, Tails and Eggman can be the only inventors in the series. So Tails' existence brings attention to a bigger issue with Eggman's character. It's his desire to rule the world and control everything. Two key things, power and profit. There's a lot of references to Eggman's rule over the world in the form of an empire, his face on everything. He puts a signpost to mark his territory. He seizes the means of production for his own profit. All of his minions are essentially slaves working in factories or out on the front lines to get pounded by Sonic and his crew. They're expendable commodities. None of their lives truly matter. Eggman is overtly capitalistic, and his existence personifies these ideas. This isn't about Eggman having some animal henchmen to boss around. It isn't about taking over a city. It's about spreading his rule and influence over the world. Imperialism, essentially. Look at these level names. Imperial Tower, Eggman Land, Eggman Empire. Eggman's essentially a glorified dictator attempting to spread his rule, prioritizing his comfort, greed, and profit over the inhabitants of the world itself. You have this concept of robotization, acting as this symbolism for working class exploitation. What the fuck are you talking about? You have this concept of robotization, acting as this symbolism for working class exploitation. With Metal Sonic being the walking personification of the slave Sonic would become working under this man's rule. Man, I'm reaching so hard. I'll cut to the chase. What exactly am I trying to say? I'm saying Sonic is the personification of socialistic ideas, and Eggman is the personification of the capitalistic. Eggman plants signs to mark his territory in his land. He's literally spreading his imperial rule, visually indicating that he's taken over their land. And Sonic spinning the sign back around with his face on it isn't him declaring it as his own, but reclaiming it back for the inhabitants of the land, his face being their symbol of freedom. This type of iconography has been used in the series several times before. Sonic's face is this symbol of liberation and freedom. For colonized people, the most essential value, because it's the most concrete, is first and foremost the land. The land will bring them the bread, and above all, dignity. If that ain't enough, alright, cool. Alright, in Sonic Forces, as of this recording anyway, it's the most recent mainline Sonic game. And when depicting the resistance fighting back against Eggman's imperial rule, they specifically hone in on the colors red, black, and beige. Why? Typically in menus and iconography surrounding this character, you would assume that Sonic's theme would be something relating to blue. Perhaps some variation of shapes like the Japanese box art. But they specifically chose red, beige, and black in a game about uprising against an industrial dictator, taking back land they seize with each new mission. Because it harkens back to 1920s Soviet Union propaganda. The movement and style had heavy emphasis on its social value, rallying people together to fight against oppression, with strong socialist ideas being pushed, one of which being unity, something that Sonic is no stranger to. You'd be hard pressed to find any form of revolutionary not depicted in red in some form because of this. Sonic Forces ends with Sonic giving a speech about rebuilding the world. It's the common belief of revolutionaries that in order to establish a new system that better recognizes the collective good of the people, the current system needs to be dismantled and destroyed. Level progression in Sonic tends to reflect this as well. In Sonic 2, you're in these beautiful hills and you gradually see this chemical plant and a Koek ruin, seeing what these factories are doing to the environment and the creatures that coexist with it. Capitalism tends to destroy two sources of wealth, nature and human beings. But marking Sonic as a revolutionary is still a little bit ridiculous. Calling the blue boy a radical just because he has a cartoon villain that wants to rule the world is a bit too vague. And if that was the only criteria, then the entire media is filled with radicals. But outside his revolutionary climate change ideas, a game which I think consolidates Sonic's place and ideals is the fan favourite, Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic in Sonic Adventure 2 isn't this paragon for the US military. He's labelled as a terrorist, and for an overwhelming majority of the game. Why? He's obviously supposed to be the hero. We as players know Sonic isn't a terrorist, he isn't a criminal, so why the hostility? He saves the day all the time, and as far as we're aware, the government and police haven't solved anything, or made any strides to confront these issues. Instead, they imprison and attack the creature that saved them. It's clear our moral compass isn't supposed to lay with the government in this game. An interesting fact about Sonic Adventure 2 is how an overwhelming majority of the game, you're destroying the military's robots. You're not working with Eggman, but in the same breath, you're not exactly working with Gun. You're not working with the police, and Sonic has no qualms destroying anything they throw at him.
Sheesh. There always seems to be a lot of police around when you don't need them.
This is another element of Sonic that's always been present in multiple forms of media. Sonic is very anti-authoritarian, particularly because of his ego, and just because he fights Eggman doesn't mean he's interested in becoming a lapdog for the government. He isn't afraid to break their stuff too. Get this into your head. If violence was only a thing of the future, if exploitation and oppression never existed on Earth, then perhaps displays of non-violence would relieve the conflict. But if the entire regime, even your non-violent thoughts, is governed by thousand-year-old oppression, your passiveness serves no other purpose than to put you on the side of oppressors. There's something inherently fascinating about the decision to include humans in Sonic's entry into the third dimension. People often struggle to distinguish the newer games and era of Sonic with the older stuff, but I think the best way to actually word it is the human era. Sonic in the human world stands out like a sore thumb. That point has really been made to death. But what people don't understand is how Sonic's existence in this world is supposed to place him in stark contrast with the humans he can coexist with. After all, if Sonic was exactly like these humans, there would be no appeal in placing him in these situations in the first place. These differences aren't just visual, they're ideological. It's fascinating to me how Sonic Team chose to depict the US government as always heavily armed, and often in the wrong because of how much they wish to control. Now I'm not saying that Sonic is making some choice statement about the military-industrial complex. However, I think there's a reason why our strongest impression of them has been a military organization called Gun, and them killing a child because they wanted to control something they were unfamiliar with. In vigilante stories, it's commonplace for the police to be depicted as incompetent, but SA2 goes a step further to depict them as violent. The government don't do much in the understanding front because again, when they see something they can't control, they use imperial methods to seize it or destroy it. The implication being, something cannot exist if the government doesn't have knowledge of it, or most importantly, the ability to control it. And not only is that not far off from Eggman's beliefs, but it's the very antithesis of Sonic's beliefs. It's why he holds hostility towards them, in the good games anyway. Eggman and the government are just two different shades of the same imperial capitalistic philosophy, one that Sonic opposes because Sonic's an anarchist, and I don't say that to exaggerate, I just think it's really fitting for the character. Sonic's whole philosophy is freedom, environmental rights, and a complete refusal to be subservient to any and all authority. City Escape is arguably the most iconic 3D Sonic stage of all time, and the song and level is about running from the police, the feds. The Sonic Riders games are essentially the stylistic racing equivalent of the adventure games, and Sonic's main rivals in those games are called the Babylon Roads. Babylon is often a term used to refer to oppressive empires and a corrupt system. It's no mistake then that they have tales of ruling everything, and the main trio are depicted as infamous thieves. I'm really reaching at the straws, nigga. Sonic's theme, It Doesn't Matter, is about rejecting this notion of right and wrong and just living free for yourself. Some of these lines, man, I swear. Well, I don't show off, I don't criticize, I'm just living by my own feelings. I won't give in, won't compromise, I just have my own steadfast heart of gold. I don't know why, I just can't leave though it might be tough, but I ain't out of control, just living by my word. Don't ask me why, I don't need a reason. I got my way, my own way. This fight isn't for anybody, it's purely for myself. Sonic has always had an ego, and I think that plays a part into these ideas too. Sonic doesn't enter the World Grand Prix because he's suspicious of Eggman. It's because he has a big ego and doesn't like that Jet was faster than him on the hoverboard.
New competition!
Some would say that makes for a bad story, but I would say that places a greater emphasis on the character and his shortcomings. While he has fought for the sake of others, at no point has Sonic done something that he himself didn't believe in, and there's a defining character moment in Sonic and the Black Knight that illustrates this. The storybook games are a fascinating aspect of the series because they're ironically the titles where Sonic feels the most in character. I think the reason for this is by virtue of placing Sonic in such an abstract world, you're forced to emphasize what makes Sonic Sonic. Black Knight has a great moment with this, and it's probably my favourite moment from the character, Sonic rejecting this idea of a world that never ends, despite the fact that it isn't inherently very heroic. Essentially what Melina's... What's her name, Melina? I'm gonna call her Melina, alright cool. Essentially what Melina is doing is ensuring everlasting peace with her powers, and Sonic says no no no. Why? It flies in the face of his ideas. His way of life is to live free, in a natural world without any form of rule. He believes nature should take its course and we have no right to interfere with that. Anything manufactured under someone's rule is fake, it's not freedom. I'm not saying the Sonic series is about revolution and uprising. I'm saying there's something inherently anarchist about the way they've chosen to present the character and the narrative surrounding him. Sonic is an anarchist, fighting against industrial imperialism and authoritarian corruption. A symbol of freedom, choosing to live by nature and nothing more. It's a weird thing to say, and I don't know if it was intentional, but there's so many things in the series that make it clear. Sonic will destroy anything and anyone in his way. It doesn't matter if it's Eggman or the police or the embodiment of justice itself. Sonic doesn't believe in any form of authoritarian rule. It's not just a threat to his people, it's a threat to his way of life. It's a threat to freedom. And if you know anything about Sonic, you know he's not going to stand for it.
It's just something I always do. It's ordinary.